Let us remember to remember Kareminduthu. May we remember not to forget. Let us remember to remember not to forget. May we remember to remember. Let us remember not to forget. Remember the Anyona trio. Him, Katangu, and the great Professor Okongo, who is in our midst. Them who were jailed and went down the dungeons of High Court singing the national anthem. Let us remember not to forget. Let us remember to remember. May we remember not to forget. Let us remember not to forget. Let us remember to remember. Thank you.
I just want to introduce somebody here who is the daughter of a very great friend of Pinto, Sujit Hare. This is his daughter, Amilcar Hare. So pleased to have you.
I'm also deeply touched that even though 50 years have passed since his untimely death, Pio and his work have not been forgotten.
Shuja Pinto is a hero freedom fighter who firmly stood for recovery of Kenyans' freedom and independence at whatever cost. In the minds of souls of the Mau Mau liberators of Kenya from colonial dictatorship, Shuja Pinto is a cherished comrade in arms in his death through assassination. Those who organized his execution shall remain cursed as they walk in the streets or are already suffering in the hell for their traitorous sins.
I married a Maasai. I lived in Maasai. That's where some of the big detention camps were. Isenya, those who knew about it. So was at the river. And who knows how many of us used to go in and try to help people, even smuggle letters. And even myself, I managed to disband, to sabotage. I did sabotage Maasai morals collected by the colonialists to go and fight Mau Maus in the forest. And we went and we sabotaged the camp. There were about a few thousand. And by the time they came with the lorries, they found the camp had nobody. I was a part of it. And I need to say,
a few years ago, I was in Guinea-Bissau. While there, I wanted to pay my respects to Amilcar Cabral, who is buried there. It took weeks to make the arrangements for me to be able to visit the mausoleum because I had to apply in writing to the military. The mausoleum is located within the military headquarters in Bissau. When I eventually got a formal letter giving the specific day and the specific time I would be allowed to visit, when we turned up, my colleagues and I, at the military barracks, it took about 30 minutes of negotiations to get in. And we eventually were told that we had to buy some flowers from the shop directly opposite the barracks before we could go in. So about $80 later, we were eventually allowed in. We were accompanied by the military and others to the barracks, through the barracks, to the back where the mausoleum is and where other comrades are buried. We laid down our flowers and so on and reflected on this. As we walked away, I asked the senior military personnel who was accompanying us why the mausoleum was in the barracks instead of somewhere that citizens could have access to. The officer insisted to me that anyone could visit the mausoleum at any time that they like. But it was important, he said to me, to have the mausoleum carefully protected for security reasons. As I walked away, it occurred to me that the military the descendants of the assassins of Cabral were as afraid of him in death as they were in life. It occurred to me that the military realized also that memorials are more about the future than they are about the past.
Pinto alikuwa na mimi katika jela moja kwa miaka 4. Na mimi nikiwa ninaweza kusoma roho ya mtu, nilisoma na nikajua ya kwamba Pinto alikuwa amejitolea kikamilifu kupigania nchi ya Kenya hii ili watu wa Kenya wawe huru. Na msisahau hata kidogo ya kwamba watu wa Mau Mau hawakwenda kupigana kwa sababu ya kabila moja kama inavyodaiwa na wengine wao ambao hawapendi sisi. Sisi tulikuwa watu wa vision. Hata ingawa hatukwenda kwa shule kubwa kama nyinyi, lakini tulikuwa na vision kubwa ya nchi ya Kenya.
The Pio Gama Pinto I knew was first and foremost a political strategist, then a brother to detainees, and then a husband and father.
There is a Maasai proverb that they quote, "So say the elders, the deeds of a man, a woman, are greater than the details of his birth." And I guess we could add, or his death. As painful as Pinto's death remains, it is his deeds captured by Noroge's book.
This year is also the 10th anniversary of another giant freedom fighter, Bildad Kagya, who died in 2005. Kagya and Pinto shared every aspect of their great struggle. They are an unending inspiration to all who love freedom in Kenya. They were very close friends. Both had served long periods in detention, and when Kagya was released and first reached Nairobi, it was with Pio and Emma that Bildad and Deborah Wambui Kagya stayed in Nairobi. So all of us here celebrating Pio are therefore also celebrating Bildad, whose commemoration is today going on just now in Muranga, close by his famous posho mill.
Pio Pinto used to run the Pan African Press, and he published a newspaper called the Pan African. And in December 12, 1963, he published a special account to celebrate Uhuru. It was a Uhuru souvenir. And in it, he published a lengthy account of Kenya's nationalist struggle. It's really worth reading. It's very long, very detailed, and very, very interesting. I'm only going to pick out one thing that impressed me from that for now, and that was what he wrote on tribalism. This is what he wrote. In 1956, the demand of the African members to be allowed to form a political organization was met by the British government by allowing the formation of political bodies on a district basis. As most of the districts coincide with tribal areas, the British government set out to implant tribalism in its most virulent form into the body politic of Kenya. This move was to have the most dangerous consequences for Kenya, and the country is still suffering. This was in 1963. The country is still suffering from the effects of this policy. I thought that were very prophetic words.
He spent long hours in his office at home, writing to newspapers, arguing the independence cause. And we must remember, this is a time when the country was silenced and there were no voices for the majority of people. Writing articles advancing the rights of detainees, composing memoranda on issues such as the fair distribution of land, and drafting speeches for his political colleagues.
Personally, I wrote a column, Cabral Pinto, for 5 years between 2000 2006 and 2011, Saturday Nation, and I picked the name Cabral Pinto because I was working with the Ford Foundation and we were not allowed to express any political views. And luckily they didn't discover until Moses Korea, when I was being interviewed for the position as Chief Justice, blew up my cover. But in those columns, I was able to, as much as I could, reflect Pinto's vision, ideology, and politics.
Wangari Maathai said of him, "He is a part of our history, part of what we are. We see in his work the love this man had for his country." So we know that his political strategy was always moved by these great and unselfish ends. So what was the freedom struggle for? Our freedom fighters were fighting against indignity, against humiliation, whether on ground of color or lack of schooling or whatever other spurious reason that was given. They were fighting against violence by government officials, or by individuals with power. They were fighting against poverty. Mahatma Gandhi had reminded us that poverty is the greatest violence.
Shujaa Pinto and I, together with my biological father, Shujaa Kahengeri Wagetu, suffered, and Achengo Neko, and a host of other freedom fighters, heroes and heroines, were tortured, ill-treated for years in the notorious detention camp of Takwa, Manda Island in Lamu.
His home office was his sanctum. No one, not even I, was allowed to disturb him. During periods of intensive writing, he rarely ate solid food. He was sustained by copious amounts of sweet tea and cigarettes. It was not unusual for Pio to go to bed around 2 a.m. and rise at 7 to continue his writing. His focus and stamina were marvelous.
The steadfastness of Shujaa Pinto in carrying out assessments in the Mau Mau massive movement, struggle for independence, lingers in the minds of Mau Mau fraternity, in images as if he is still a director of the Desai Memorial Hall, where he hid and protected Mau Mau freedom fighters who would have been shot at sight to kill by the trigger-happy colonial soldiers and their home guard collaborators.
Fitz, if I may remind you about what you said at that time. We had much in common with Pinto. To begin with, we were both penniless and terribly dressed. We were at ease with one another, and our ideas of independence and socialism were similar. One day, Pio suggested that we should do something in East Africa to assist in the liberation of Goa. Now Fitz was surprised because he thought that they were East Africans and should confine their activities to East Africa. Pio explained that as socialists, it was our duty to assist all liberation fronts. Even if we did not now consider ourselves Goans, we had names such as De Souza and Pinto, which could be used with some effect. Portuguese colonialism was as bad as any other.
A letter from a man called Pinto, I had never met until that time, asking some leftist books from London. I said, let me go and see him. When I went and saw him in the Sabotage library, fortunately I met Jomo Kenyatta in the evening there. I met J.M. Nazareth and many others. I was very thrilled and excited to see they were there, with all of us fighting the same thing. I asked Jomo about communism. He said, we are not communists in this world. We are only nationalists.
Tuna fix D'Souza hapa, ndugu yangu ambaye tulifanya kazi pamoja naye. Yoyote iliyotendeka katika nchi hii, Fix D'Souza alikuwa nyuma yake kuona nchi yetu imekombolewa kutoka utumwa wa mabeberu.
This is Fitz still speaking. In 1960, only a few months after he was released, Fio formed the East African Goa League. The government had persistently refused Fio permission to see Kenyatta in Maralal. But it allowed the East African Goan League, a delegation, to visit him, and was completely shocked when Fio arrived as the leader of the delegation. Fio then went to New Delhi and discussed Goa with Pandit Nehru. He asked Pandit Nehru for assistance to start a nationalist paper in Kenya. Panditji gave him funds with which Fio began the Pan African Press Limited, which published Sautium Africa, Pan Africa, and the Nyanza Times.
If only I could play the guitar, I would have done a song for you, and you, and you. If only I knew how to play the guitar, I would have done a song for us. If only I could play the guitar, I would have done a song for we, for those who wrote our history, those who wrote her story, our story, the story still not told. If only I knew how to play the guitar. That is why I say, make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk of a killing is a killing that they never mention. A killing they do it in detention. A killing they do it with intention in a freedom that they never fought for. Make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk of a killing is a killing that they never mention. A killing they do it in detention. A killing they do it with intention in a freedom that they never fought for. Make we talk. They kill Karemi, they kill Kimathi. Mekatili Lisafaso, make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk of Jivanji. Make we talk of Menlal Desai. Make we talk of Preval Chef, J.M. Desai, Eddie Pereira, Murumbi, G.L. Vidyarthi, Achru Kapila, Ishen Das, Harun Ahmed, D.K. Sharda. Let us talk. Make we talk of Makan Singh, the great Simba wa wafanyakazi. Let us talk. Let us talk of Fitz D'Souza. Make we talk. Make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Make we talk, make we talk, make we talk. Let us talk of a feeling is a feeling that they never mention. A killing they do it with intention in a freedom that they never fought for.
Mekatilili wa menza. Habari ya Koitale Usomoei. Habari ya Waiyaki Wahinga. Hawa ni watu ambao walikuwa mbele yetu, na ndio hawa watu ambao tulichukua waliokuwa wakisema tukaiendeleza mbele.
In the 1963 election, Pio was in charge of the Nairobi election campaign, and he worked for all the Nairobi and many other candidates without himself looking for a position. He helped me personally, that's Kagea, in my election campaign. And when the KANU head office turned down my nomination and denounced me, Pio was one of the many friends who had me declared as the KANU candidate. Pio's role in the KANU election campaign of 1961 and his contribution towards KANU's victory is greater than that of any other single person. He never sought for position, and it was I and other friends who persuaded him to contest the Central Legislative Assembly and specially elected member seats, which he won.
To be a political strategist against tyranny is a dangerous profession. But Pio was no stranger to danger. His detention order stated, 1, he was involved in gun traffic in the Mau Mau. 2, he was drafting documents for the Mau Mau. 3, he was among the political strategists of the subversive campaign of the Mau Mau, unquote. As a political strategist, we must ask, political strategy for what ends? Because we know there are political strategists in Kenya who can serve highly questionable ends, including of tyranny, whether of numbers or of individuals. Pio was never for tyranny of any sort. Pio's political strategy was for the ideals of the independent struggle. Pio himself was firmly, he held his convictions, political convictions and principles firmly.
What have we done for the man who supported the movements for freedom here in Kenya, as well as in South Africa, in Mozambique and Angola, and so on? I think it is both depressing but also singularly apposite that the place where Pinto lived and where he was assassinated has not only been erased, grabbed, but also we have allowed to have built there a large shopping center that epitomizes Kenya today, a temple to commodity fetishism, where imported goods are sold, goods that have largely killed off the indigenous industries in Kenya. A temple designed to satisfy the needs of a parasitic and unproductive class, a local capitalist class that are the product of the policies that Pio so vehemently opposed and for which he gave his life.
We all know, although a lot of us don't talk about this, that we know that these ethnic, regional, and religious, gender, and generational divisions are the bane of our politics. We get together and, and before you know it, the middle classes have run to their own ethnic community. When Marx was writing about religion as opium of the people, I don't remember that he actually thought the petty bourgeoisie would also be part of that. Will be getting that poison. And so in this country, as you know, we have this opium 24/7. We get, unusual doses, every day, and that's what happens with the divisions that are making it very difficult for this country to be a nation, and it's becoming very difficult to build an alternative state and society that is pro-people. And that's the kind of vision that the freedom fighters Pio Gama Pinto among them.
Mimi nilifanya kazi na Pinto moja kwa moja, na nilijua roho yake ilikuwa imejitolea. Wale watu wengine wanasemaga Pinto alikuwa Muhindi. Sisi hatuamini hivi. Tunaamini Pinto alikuwa binadamu. Binadamu ambaye ana roho ya kibinadamu, ambaye alitaka tuokoe watu waliokuwa wakinyanyazwa na wabeberu moja kwa moja. Kwa hivyo hata ikiwa alitoka Goa, ni binadamu aliyekuwa na haja na watu wa nchi ya Kenya na wale wengine walioko katika Afrika waondoe ubeberu ndio wapate raha.
Achinga Neko, who was at that time Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, he says, I first met Pinto in 1951 when he was working for the East Africa Indian National Congress in the Desai Memorial Hall. Later, when I was acquitted in the notorious trial in Kitale, I was transferred to Manda Island off Lamu. Pio was brought there in 1954. At first, we were not allowed to meet, except when we went to the sea to empty the camp's soil buckets. Pio was confined to his own camp away from the rest of us, who numbered about 200. Being an Asian, he was given a special ration. But whenever there was a chance, Pio shared it with us. Whatever he received from home, he shared with us. To stop him from quickly giving away everything, I elected to be treasurer for the little amounts we received. On the day of his release, we found he had no shoes. And I think Gituru talked about that, because he had given away his shoes to someone released earlier. He tried on mine, but decided not to take them, saying, you see, Acheng, no one will notice my bare feet, whereas you would shock so many if you were released without shoes.
He was more than a brother to detainees. Detainees would arrive at 5 in the morning and sit by the back door. Pio had standing instructions that anyone who came was to be given chai while waiting. Pio would listen to the requests from detainees and write their petitions. He was always welcoming, warm and patient, knowing that many of them had walked miles to see him.
It was precisely around the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, so-called African Socialism and its Implications for Planning in Kenya, that the polarization between the KANU regime and Pio erupted. Authorship of this paper has often been attributed to Tom Mboya. In fact, the key architect of that document was an American political economist, Edgar O. Edwards, who was attached to the Ministry of Planning in Kenya of that day. He was but part of a team of American think tanks and apparently bona fide dignitaries at the US Embassy in Nairobi in the 1960s, who were put at Tom Mboya's disposal to help write economic blueprints and to outwit his adversaries and help the US counter so-called communism. The paper, despite its claim for socialism, was a perfect articulation of how capitalism in the peripheries would be developed in the post-independence period. It was in opposition to that text that Pio wrote a counter-proposal, which, had he not been assassinated, could very well have led, some believe, to the removal of Kenyatta through a vote of no confidence and the emergence possibly of Odinga as the new president.
This is what Bildad says. Since independence, we had lost Pinto, Boya, Karumba, and J.M. Kariuki. Pinto was one of my best friends. Shortly before he was killed, he had confided in me that he had gathered information about money from foreign countries that had been meant for the freedom fighters and had been used by Kenyatta. This information was extremely damaging to the president, and he was sure it would cause outrage if he would raise it in Parliament. Pinto also shared this information with other friends, and one of them betrayed him. The threat that Pinto raised with the information that he received was originally, the information that Pio had received was that the British government had given £5 million, not for the settlements of land, but for the compensation and help for the resettlement of people who had come back from the forests and from the detention camps, and for the families who had lost their family member. That money was given by the British. It was received in Kenya. No acknowledgement publicly was made of this, and it was clear that the money had been pocketed.
Cabral reminded his comrades that before we were Africans, we were humans. And that was what Pio so much wanted to see, was the emergence of the new human.
Dr. Munia Wayaki, one-time foreign minister, says Pinto was a first-class schemer and strategist. He outmaneuvered the security network to secretly secure funding for KANU. The colonialists were rooting for KADU and keeping tabs on KANU's financial strength. Pinto had pulled a fast one on the intelligence by having funds from his contacts in the communist world channeled through India, rerouted to the Indian High Commission in Dar es Salaam, and thence to his friend Appa Saheb Pant, the Indian High Commissioner in Kenya. While Mboya brought in 40,000 pounds from his American friends and Odinga brought in 75,000 pounds from the Russians, Pinto brought in 160,000 pounds. On the whole, Pinto was very instrumental in delivering victory for KANU in the 1963 elections.
When once asked how he was able to do and achieve so much, he responded, "Never underestimate how much can be achieved if you're willing to let someone else take the credit."
Coming to the assassination, the reaction to Pinto's assassination was one of utter disbelief, shock, and anger. Aching Oneko was wild. "No, no, no! Kenyatta must explain. He must explain," he shouted. Murumbi broke into loud sobs. According to Fitz, who was then Deputy Speaker of the lower house, Pinto had been tipped off 2 weeks earlier that there was a plot to murder him. After consultations with trusted friends, Pinto had decided to flee to Mozambique. But Murumbi had persuaded him to stay and offered to raise the matter of his safety with Kenyatta, Mbiu Koinange, and Charles Njonjo. Legislator Oduyo of Rang confronted Mboya and asked, "What have you people done to Pinto?" Commerce and Industry Minister Gikonyo Kiano said he was horrified that such a thing could ever happen in this country. That afternoon, both the lower house and the Senate adjourned in honor of Pinto. Vice President Odinga, sobbing, moved the house to tears as he asked for a 1-week adjournment. Pio was laid to rest beside his father in the City Park Cemetery on 27 February 1965. A few weeks before he was assassinated, he told me, that is Fitz, that his ambition was to resign his seat in Parliament and retire to Lindi or Matwara on the Mozambique border to assist the freedom fighters actively. His friends would not let him go. They argued that he was needed here. He never lived to help the struggle in Mozambique, but he died with his boots on. Thank you, Fitz.
Gama Pinto is still relevant. If you read what he did to bring the races and the communities together in the struggle, he is still a beacon for progress. We also be telling him that we are aware that our country is still dominated, exploited, and oppressed. And that's the basis of our poverty. And we will pledge to be part of the vision, the global vision that another world is possible and is breathing. And we pledge to glorify his deeds, his vision, ideology, and politics, and the deeds and politics of all our leaders, nationalists and patriotic, and that will teach our children is Pinto's nationalism and patriotism.
We should feel immensely happy that those ideas of Pio, Jaramogi, all the freedom fighters here, the freedom fighters who have gone, all of them, they have left a lasting impact in the hearts of Kenyans who have never stopped, fighting for the same things that they fought for, and secondly, to find inspiration for them, from them, for the struggles that went through in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, till the Constitution 2010.
Mimi nataka kuzungumza kwa vijana walioko hapa sasa. Sisi hatuna nguvu sasa. Hatuwezi kukimbia namna tulikimbia milima kwa milima kwa milima kwa milima. Tunataka nyinyi kukimbia kuona yale tuliyokwenda kupigania munaidumisha. Mkikosa kufanya hivyo, basi mtaangamia. Na mpaka sasa tumeanza kuona mambo ambayo hayaendi sawa sawa katika nchi yetu.
But it is clear that in his praxis, in his acts of solidarity with liberation movements, in his struggles to arm and make sure that their land freedom army was sustained, for the causes for which he fought, that these are some of the ideas that he fought for during his short life. The challenge we face, comrades, friends, is to construct a memorial to Pio Pinto that truly represents not only such aspirations, but also lays the foundation for our own liberation. A memorial that is as much about the future as about the past. Perhaps the future might be the re-establishment of the Lumumba Institute.
What mattered most was that the Kenyan people benefited, not him. Again, thank you for your work in promoting this remarkable person and his ideals for a more just Kenya for all Kenyans. Emma Gama Pinto.
So, thank you again for everybody for giving us this chance to say a few minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.